At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is our secret.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
The Middle is supported by Journalism Funding Partners, a nonprofit organization striving to increase the sustainability of local journalism by building connections between donors and news organizations. More information on how you can support The Middle at listentothemiddle.com. Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ, Tolliver. And Tolliver, I'm going to start off by just coming clean about one thing as we go to air. We are actually a bit short of 100 days of Trump's presidency, but we were going to do this show a bit later, but it is actually quite hard to book guests.
Yeah, it's not your fault, man. We got to take our guests where we can get them.
Exactly. So we apologize to the 100-day purists who don't think it's fair to assess a presidency before you get to that exact number. We are going to do this show anyway.
Okay, and to be fair, a lot of our listeners may feel more than 100 years old after what they've been watching with the stock market this week, man, just in this last week with the tariffs.
Well, and that's just one part of what we're going to be talking about. Since Trump has come into office, he has fired thousands of workers, appointed a cabinet of loyalists, started unprecedented deportations, targeted law firms, media organizations, and educational institutions that have crossed him, and most recently, as you said, embarked on a global trade war. So what we want to know from you is, how are you feeling? Appalled? Thrilled? Somewhere in between? That's our question this hour. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. And we're going to get to your calls in just a moment. But first, last week, we asked you what can be done to improve legal immigration in the country. Here are some of the comments that came in after the show.
My name is George, calling from Champaign, Illinois. The power of immigration to America is not limited to what we can reap from immigrants here, but in the message that successful immigration to America sends back home to the people who choose not to come here.
Yes, my name is Tanya Becker, and I live in Montezuma, Colorado. I agree with the moratorium on immigration because it's not just about getting low-skilled, low-paid workers, but it's looking at our other social services that are just bursting at the seams. We need to deal with the immigrant communities and population we currently have.
Hey, this is Brian from Canyon, New Hampshire. Why isn't the media and the rest of us knocking on the door of the Senate and House of Representatives committees who are charged with changing the laws of our land so that we have an immigration policy that has been updated since 1990?
Well, thanks to everyone who called in. You can hear that entire episode on our podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts, along with our extra episode, One Thing Trump Did, released weekly on the podcast. So now to our topic this hour. How do you feel about the first 100 days of Trump's presidency? Tolliver, the phone number, please.
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. I'm monitoring them all, so get them in, okay?
All of them, including Twitch. Let's meet our panel. Michigan Public Political Director Zoe Clark is with us. Zoe, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, Jeremy.
And also joining us, Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram. Chad, welcome to the middle. Great to have you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Well, so before we get to the phones, Chad, we're going to hear from ordinary Americans this hour, but you know Capitol Hill better than just about any reporter there. How is Trump's presidency playing out among lawmakers in both parties so far on Capitol Hill?
Well, it's a little bit similar to what we saw during the first Trump presidency, where there's a lot of reaction, from those of us in the press corps covering it. He will do something. He will sign an executive order. He'll send out something on Truth Social, and there's reaction to that. So that's very similar. The one thing we've not seen as much, and we saw this a lot in the first term, is you had members on the Republican side of the aisle always saying, I don't read the tweets or whatever. We learned that that's kind of how he governs. He governs by sending out these types of messages. And you have a Republican Party right now that is much more aligned with him than was the case in 2017. So they're much more, simpatico there. I think that people are still reacting in that sense. I think a good example of this over the past week was the, toing and froing with the tariffs. You had Republicans generally standing behind him and saying, I thought it was interesting to listen to John Thune. He's the majority leader, represents South Dakota, a lot of agriculture there, absolutely. And he was like, he would give these lines about, if it's targeted, if these are things toward particular industries. Other Republicans would say, we should, be patient, urge patience for a while there. That was a pretty solid message we were hearing from most. But you had some others like Don Bacon, a Republican from Omaha, one of the swingiest districts in the country. He's a Republican who represents Omaha. Mm-hmm. And he said, look, that's a problem here. You had other people interjecting that they said maybe, Congress should have a role in this. If you look at the Constitution and you look at the emergency provision that he was using, it does say that there should be this consultation with Congress. Buried yesterday in this procedural rule, as it's called, that comes to the House floor. This was to get the framework for the so-called big, beautiful bill that they passed today in the House of Representatives. Buried in that was a provision which turned off the authority of the House of Representatives to interfere with the tariffs until, in one case, September 30th, and another till the rest of the year. And there were some people who were quite upset with that. And that's why, Mike Turner, Republican of Ohio, he voted against the rule.
But Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, definitely on the page of let's let President Trump do what he wants to do with the tariffs so far, and he's the one with the most power there. Zoe Clark, what about in the key swing state of Michigan, a state that, by the way, has voted for the winner of the presidential election every time since 2008? What are you hearing from people right now?
I mean, first of all, let's just sort of set the table that, like you said, we are doing this about the first 100 days. But what's sort of the joke, like the first week felt like 100 days. The first day felt like 100 years that we've all lived through. We have often talked about just sort of the news cycle. And so Michiganders, folks across the country are dealing with that. But if we're talking about this microcosm, this past week of, again, what feels like the past 100 years, here in Michigan, more than 250,000 jobs are directly tied to the auto industry. Some $50 billion goes directly between Michigan and Canada, our trading partners. It's often said that when America catches a cold, Michigan catches the flu when we're talking about the economy. And so over the past couple weeks now, we're seeing just fear. We're also seeing some excitement and some really strange bedfellows. I mean, you had the president of the UAW coming out and basically saying, tariffs, they're not all that bad, right? In fact, if anything, saying that he sort of endorses this idea. And this is how Donald Trump won in 2016, and it's how he won a few months ago, which is in this Rust Belt area of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, places that have been hit because of previous trade agreements. And we'll talk a lot about that. But so what we're seeing right now in Michigan, which is a microcosm of the country, it's why we're a swingiest of swing states, a lot of interest right now over the past week, particularly vis-a-vis the economy.
Okay, well, let's get a Michigander into this conversation, another one into this conversation.
Please.
Luke is in Portland, Michigan. Luke, go ahead. What do you think of the first 100 days of Trump?
Yes, I got to say, I cannot be happier with the president's performance in the first 100 days of his presidency. This is everything I voted for, and every week just seems to bring another thing to be excited about. The tariffs last week were exciting. The deportations before that were exciting. It just keeps getting better and better.
Why were the tariffs exciting for you?
Yeah, I think that major firms in this country have gotten wealthy off of the expropriation of our industrial base for a long time. And it was pretty cool to see them freaking out while Trump tried to, go about not only correcting the record of China versus free, fair trade, but also correcting the record with firms that have sold out the Rust Belt for the past 30, 40, 50 years. That was exciting. And then just as Trump sort of promised, right, the market went down and then the market went back up. And so we kind of got everything that we wanted, and it cost us nothing. And that was awesome.
But you don't see the fact that the market went back up was because Trump pulled back away from what he said he was going to do. Did that bother you that he said, okay, actually, no, we're going to pause this for 90 days?
No, I think 150% tariff on China and a 10% tariff on every country is exactly what I voted for. A pause is a pause. I don't think that there's no saying that wasn't the strategy all along. And it's still a tariff, and it's still hurting China. It's still helping America. I think it's great.
Luke, thanks for that call. Chad Pergram, I imagine we're going to hear many different views on the tariffs in this hour. And I imagine that there are a lot of different views on the tariffs in Washington, even, as you said, among Republicans.
Yeah, probably the biggest voice on this who has spoken out against the tariffs has been Rand Paul, the Republican senator from Kentucky. He argued yesterday, he says there is no such thing as unfair trade. If China makes a product or somebody in Asia makes a product and somebody here wants to buy it, guess what? That's fair trade. He was talking about the price of, say, getting a pair of shoes that maybe is made in Vietnam, where before, it cost $100 if you were going to set up that plant here, let alone get the materials and the workmanship and everything else to make those shoes. He said suddenly it's going to cost $150, $175. And again, Rand Paul is one of those senators who has talked about asserting the authority of Congress in this. And again, to go back to this, back and forth about the tariffs, and we're going to have tariffs, or are they going to pause them for 90 days or whatnot? I was in the hearing room with the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer yesterday. He did not seem like he was dialed into this change that was coming. He was sitting right there at the witness table.
Right.
Steve Horsford, the Democratic representative from Nevada, really got his claws into him. At one point said, WTF. And I chased Greer down the hall of the Longworth House office building, and there's video of this. I said, were you not dialed in? Was there the possibility of, insider trading on this? And he really didn't have any answers that he provided in the hall.
Well, and it gets to the point that you've made before, which is that Trump has a lot of the power here, and a lot of people are just reacting to what he does. Tolliver, it's almost hard to recount all the things that Trump has done in the last few months.
Oh, you know what? That calls for a montage, right?
Yes. Do you have one?
I do. I got one right here.
Your state is going to control your children's education. We're moving it out of Washington. I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again? We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it. We have to have Greenland. It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
That reminds me, Tolliver, we need to do a show about Greenland. I think we've covered almost every one of those topics other than Greenland. But
you're right. Oh, my God. We got Canada. We got to go to Greenland now.
We could do it from Greenland. Right. We'll be right back with more of your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
William Malinan.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We are focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking you how you feel about Trump's first 100 days. Tolliver, what is the number to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on all social media.
I'm joined by Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram and Michigan Public Political Director Zoe Clark, and the phone lines are lit up. So let's get to another caller. Jill in Kennesaw, Georgia is with us. Hi, Jill. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. My thoughts are that I'm actually very horrified over what's happened. I think there's no strategy. I think it's chaotic, purposely chaotic, and actually very frightening and embarrassing as a U.S. citizen. I'm horrified.
What is the thing that horrifies you the most? We just heard all of those different snippets of different things Trump has done since he became president again. What gets you the most?
Well, I mean, there's just a ton of things, but the tariffs is crazy. The firing of federal workers with no thought and no strategy is scary. I live in Atlanta. The CDC and the firing of 35% of the staff. I mean, I can go on and on. Taking over Greenland. I mean, there's just nothing that makes me feel good.
Yeah. Jill, thank you for that call. Chad Pergram, the firing of federal workers, it's sort of been drip, 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 but then you hear there's thousands in this organization, thousands in that organization. Do you have a sense of the overall of what's been happening with the firing of federal workers?
Well, the one thing that Congress is talking about is that, you have to codify some of these changes. If you're going to cut all these jobs, if you're going to cut all this money for these departments, that has to be codified. And this framework that was approved by the House of Representatives today, supposedly, according to Mike Johnson, the speaker, they might put some of these so-called DOGE cuts into that. I can tell you from somebody who lives in the Washington, D.C. area, there's a lot of people who, I talk to who are friends or neighbors. Some people saying, should I go? Should I take the buyout? DOGE was in my department last week, so to speak. We think we came out unscathed. That conversation is something that's being heard consistently in and around Washington. And, the Washington economy was always kind of thought to be insulated from these other types of shocks that you might have in, say, Michigan or other parts of the Midwest. As you talked about the so-called Rust Belt there. It wasn't the case in Washington. That might be changing now if they eliminate all these jobs in Washington and kind of diversify where the federal government is.
What about in Michigan, Zoe Clark? Are you seeing effects of the job cuts that have been happening with federal workers?
Yeah, I mean, let's just first, again, as I feel like I'm the one that's like, let's set the table. So let's keep setting the table, which is, of course, so much of this still is in courts, right? So as we watch all of this back and forth, it's lawsuits that have been brought. So right now, when we're talking about sort of federal courts, it's sort of like which jobs and where. But I can tell you here in the state of Michigan, we have a lot of national forests, right? And so we have federal workers. And so there's a lot of talk about what is this actually going to look like in the summer tourism season, right? When literally folks whose jobs it is to keep trails open can't. I mean, Michigan, aside from manufacturing, the state that put the world on the wheels, is the first of the economy, manufacturing. Second, is agriculture, right? We also have offices, EPA offices, where there are federal workers that have been laid off, at least right now, as again, it goes through the courts. And so, I mean, much like any other state, you're seeing it happen in all of these different facets. And it feels like there's always someone that knows someone, right? Or family member, a cousin or something like that. And that's continuing to spread.
Well, the federal government is the largest employer in the country. So people are going to know people, especially as these cuts continue. Let's go to Kelly, who's in Albert Lee, Minnesota. Hi, Kelly. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm terrified by the first 100 days. It seems like forever, and it seems like it was just a minute ago, and yet so much damage has been done in that amount of time. And there's so much uncertainty and chaos.
What are you thinking of specifically, Kelly? What troubles you the most?
He's destroying our standing in the world, attacking our allies. I feel like it's almost a dictatorship. There's no checks or balances. Republicans, nobody's holding Trump and Musk in check. They are kind of running rampant, and almost as if they're intentionally trying to sabotage the government and our democracy.
Kelly, thank you for that call. Chad Pergram, take that one on, and just either your response, your reaction to it, to hearing that. Are you hearing that on Capitol Hill? But also the change in foreign policy that's happened. There's been a lot so far.
Yeah, and that's where some members, certainly on the Democratic side of the aisle, they've said, look, we're destroying certain relationships with allies. When you talk about the intelligence community and how this trust is built to share information, that's a big one right there. When you start having these talks and calling Canada the 51st state and calling the prime minister governor, and things, some members of Congress have said, that's below the president of the United States to be talking like that. And it seems to have hardened, the resolve of the Canadians, at least in that case. I'll bring this back to trade. People have said, with the tariffs and what's been going on over the past 2 weeks, they criticized Canada and said, they're really putting the screws to us on this. But it was President Trump back during 2020 who negotiated, the USMCA, the United States Mexico-Canada Agreement, which was to replace NAFTA. He did that alongside Nancy Pelosi, who was always kind of looking askance at NAFTA. And somebody said, well, what country would agree to another trade pact with the United States? There's no trust there. And that's going to take years to build back.
Well, and in terms of Canada, Zoe Clark, Detroit is right across the bridge from Ontario and Windsor, and you are probably seeing firsthand not just boycotts of U.S. goods, but I think there's been a 70% drop in Canadian tourists coming over the border. How is the Trump move on Canada and all the things he's done with Canada affected things where you are?
Yeah, things aren't great. It's like, the relationship, it's complicated. Folks are angry at the United States. They are disappointed. We're already seeing signs, right? Buy Canadian, not selling this, not selling that from America. We are much closer to Windsor. I mean, this is what people do. They go across the bridge, they come back. There's frustration. There was, hockey games, right? And booing. I mean, of course, it's a hockey game. Folks are going to boo, but people standing when the Canadian, national anthem is being played.
Americans standing.
No, sorry, Canadians standing and Americans booing. Exactly.
And booing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating to see. And as Chad was talking about, these long-term relationships. So that's for Michigan and Canada. But I mean, you can see that with conversations that we're having with the EU and Britain, right? I mean, just these partners that for decades and decades and decades felt like solidified friends that you could turn to. And we're just seeing a complete paradigm shift right that whether that be our neighbors in Canada or halfway around the world.
Can I add one quick point about Canada?
Yeah.
This is something that happened on the Hill yesterday. And under other circumstances, we never would have paid attention to it. The Senate confirmed Pete Hoekstra, the former Michigan congressman, as the ambassador to Canada. I know that the ambassador to Canada under Joe Biden was not confirmed until late November of 2021. So this is pretty early on. And he got confirmed, 60 votes. Okay, Pete Hoekstra, he's been an ambassador before. He was ambassador to the Netherlands. But just the idea that there was a focus on who is going to be the ambassador to Canada and what this job is going to be like, that's not something we've ever had before.
Yeah. Tolliver, what is coming in online?
Yeah, Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota says, I have no trust in the current administration. We have foreign policy by extortion, and the wild fluctuations in the stock market due to the contradictory tariff announcements is creating a perfect storm for insider trading. Christine in Elkhart, Indiana says, Trump's first 100 days is deja vu, PTSD rolled together. I worry about my investments, my democracy, and the worldwide body of politics being decimated, and this one might be my favorite. Mark says, I don't know what I'm more scared of, the first 100 days of Trump or the potential first 100 days of J.D. Vance. Man, I can tell you, J.D. Vance is taking on the chin online. I don't know if you've been seeing this.
The memes. Yes, there's a lot of memes of J.D. Vance. Let's go to Scotty, who's in Augusta, Georgia. Hi, Scotty. Welcome to The Middle. What are your thoughts on the first 100 days of Trump?
Hi, Jeremy. Big fan. Miss you on Marketplace. But when the norm has become the acceptance of political candidates who win elections, take office, and then follow through on practically nothing they promised during the campaign, here you have somebody who's hit the ground running and doing something. I think a lot of the outrage is misplaced. And while I might not necessarily agree with the haphazard and ham-hammered way they go about some things, I'm not mired in the despair that this country's been in the last 4 years. And this is actually the hope that I can believe in now.
You're happy that he's getting things done.
Exactly. I mean, political campaign promises are the norm, and not following through those, you just come to accept that. And I think that's where the outrage should be, not on somebody who's doing something. You might not agree with what he's doing or how he's doing, but at least he's doing something, which I said the previous 4 years. Tell me what the standout achievements of that administration was. And looking forward to another 4 years of that? No, thank you. I at least have some hope now. This is the hope I can believe in now.
Are you worried at all, Scotty, just about the economy right now with all these blanket across-the-board tariffs to friends and foes alike?
Of course, I am in the gig economy, so the less people spend, the less I'm going to make. I'm trying to pay my bills. So, yes, in the short term, I think we're going to have to feel the pain. This country has flailed in so many areas for so many years that something has to be done or it's only going to get worse. And that is actually worse to me than the short-term pain that we might be feeling now.
Scotty, thank you for calling in and bringing me back to Marketplace. That was a long time ago. Chad Pergram, just on the issue of getting things done, there are a lot of Democrats right now and independents too, according to the polls, who are looking and saying, well, I don't necessarily want these things to be the things that are getting done, and I'm worried about the pace of what's getting done. But I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans in Congress who are very happy that things are changing at the speed with which they are.
Well, they're certainly seeing them from the administration standpoint. And the reason the Republicans in Congress are happy to see the things happening at the White House or throughout the administration is because Congress, for decades now, has continually ceded the legislative authority, the Article 1 authority in the Constitution, to the executive branch. In fact, it was Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri yesterday, who said, the reason that President Trump has taken the bull by the horns on tariffs and trade is because Congress didn't mess with this for a while. It was too hot a potato. He said, guess what? President Trump is willing to deal with that. So I think that ceding of power is something that's been going on for a long time. I think it's something that makes the job easier for Republicans, which is why this struggle just to get this framework through, the Senate to some degree, the House is really going to be the problem. And then getting these two together is just a monster task, because that's actually Congress having to do something, especially in the House with these narrow margins. So as long as they can serve mostly on the Republican side of the aisle as cheerleaders and support for the administration and let him do the dirty work, the Republican side of the aisle in Congress is okay with that.
Bill is calling from Chicago. Bill, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with your thoughts about the first 100 days of Trump.
Hi. I would say that I am horrified and afraid. There is a lot of talk about tariffs this evening, but that's not the first thing on my mind. The first concern on my mind is the erosion of civil rights and the weaponizing of the government against protest, which is like banana republic level stuff. And also the dismantling of the federal government, so willy-nilly. I actually am someone who believes that the government, even though it is a clumsy and mysterious machine, does actually keep us safe and healthy and keep the economy stable. And I no longer feel like it can do that.
And we saw the news, Bill, you're in Chicago, Northwestern University, one of the latest targets of Trump in terms of halting funding because of policies that he doesn't like at the university.
Yeah, that's Heritage Foundation stuff. Of course, that's the people around him. With the Heritage Foundation has had it out for universities, and it's not because they're anti-Semitic it's just because they're liberal. They're viewed as liberal places. So that's all like a fig leaf. This has really been a chance for the Heritage Foundation people around him to dig their claws into public universities across the country and private universities as well. Yeah. It's bad. It's bad, but and people don't really understand the mechanics of what's going on there.
Yeah, Bill, thank you very much for that call. Zoe Clark, you're coming to us from the home of the University of Michigan. Is there concern there about what he's talking about, the weaponization, in Bill's view, of the government of the Trump administration going after institutions, including law firms and universities?
Yes, absolutely. And we should say, this idea of sort of taking bites out of institutions has gone back for a decade now with this president, whether it's the institutions of sort of science and academia, whether it's the institutions of journalism, for example. But to your point, yes, the University of Michigan is seeing huge cuts, particularly when we're talking about any NIH grants and dollars that go to medical research. research, for example. And so the university and academics throughout the state and throughout the country, right, or whether you're talking about the University of Michigan or whether you're talking about Columbia, right, are trying to figure out what you do and how far you are willing to sort of succumb. I can tell you that the University of Michigan, within just the past few weeks, has put out a statement that they are closing all DEI offices. Folks are already leaving the university in some higher up positions who are overseeing those offices because of just pure anger that they feel like the university is capitulating. And then you're talking about student life. I can tell you that here in Michigan, there are many universities, not just the University of Michigan, where students have had their visas revoked, right? It made huge news a couple weeks ago. But again, in this sort of day-to-day news cycle, we're losing sight of the fact that there are dozens now that have gotten visas revoked and who are basically being told to, go back to the countries from which they came. So, right, we're spending a lot of time talking about the economy. Certainly, some of that has to do with the fact that we know that's what drove voters out to, the polling booths last November.
Right.
But we are seeing a lot having to do with the day-to-day life that the caller was just talking about that he's concerned about.
Well, interesting also that we're talking so much about the economy because the tariffs have not even started to filter into the things that we buy yet, but that could happen very quickly. And then people are really going to start to see, a 10% or 140% or whatever we're putting on China right now in the cost of goods. Tolliver, there have been some growing protests around the country, but there doesn't seem to be a leader to the opposition to Trump so far.
Yeah, that's true. Although we did have some sharp criticism from former President Obama in a public event the other day. He's otherwise been pretty quiet since Trump took office, but take a listen to this.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening.
I don't know, man. That tan suit was pretty egregious.
I don't think he mentioned that in that, but that would have been a good moment to bring it up.
Honestly.
We'll be right back with more calls on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, right, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and this hour we're asking you how you feel about Trump's first 100 days. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. My guests are Michigan Public Political Director Zoe Clark and Fox News Senior Congressional Correspondent Chad Pergram, and the phone lines are full, so let's go to Seth, who is in Barnard, Vermont. Hi, Seth. What do you think so far of Trump's presidency?
I cannot hear that name. And for the record, I'm very concerned that we're looking at a situation where we have thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of jobs on the line in this country at the moment. And we're looking at a situation where the National Endowment for the Humanities, our museums and libraries have been cut from funding. And that means quite literally that our publishers, our artists, our writers, our teachers, our academics, and our children will suffer because they're not able to learn.
Seth,
Please forgive me, but if we do not support those whom are looking out for us in our culture, whom will support us? Thinking about international allies and our present humanitarian situation specifically. Our human intelligence for the present and future generations are at stake if we do not prize back and fund those whom look out for our culture.
Seth, I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you very much for that call. And Chad Pergram, it gets to the issue of our cultural institutions. We haven't talked about this, but, Trump has made himself the chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center. He's now going into the Smithsonian Institution in Washington and saying, I want you to focus on this and not that. What about that? What about the Trump's role in our cultural institutions?
Well, that's going to be something very interesting to watch if they really start to change some of the exhibits and displays. Zoe talked about, trails and forests and parks not being open. That's the thing that people, come to Washington, D.C. to see, and whether or not, that really starts to evolve. I want to see what types of shows that they put on at the Kennedy Center. He commented the other day that he didn't think much of Hamilton. He said, but we're going to have some big hits here. I thought Hamilton was probably as big a hit as you could possibly have. In fact, I saw it at the Kennedy Center several years ago. But that said, the thing I want to watch, and I'll bring it back to Congress, just this evening, the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins of Maine and Patty Murray of Washington State, the Democrat, she's the top Democrat on that committee, said they're starting the appropriations process for fiscal year 2026, which will begin in October. I want to see where that money is cut, whether it goes up or down in those appropriations bills. As the caller stated, for the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities. And you could see them trying to zero things out in the House of Representatives. That's not new. They've done that type of thing, even public broadcasting. That's something that goes back to the Newt Gingrich days in the mid-1990s. But when it comes to that, that's going to be very challenging in the Senate. Why? Because, A, the senators generally think about these things a little bit differently because they represent larger swaths of people. And number two, just the idea that you need to get 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. And to pass any one of those bills or a clump of those bills, you're going to need 60 votes. And John Thune has talked about, I want to move the bills individually throughout the year. He's criticized Chuck Schumer when he was the majority leader last year. So guess what? They might talk a good game, but I want to see what that number figure looks like in those appropriations bills.
So just to be clear here, Chad, and you can make some news here for our 430 public radio stations listening to this, you think that it will be harder for Congress to actually zero out funding for public broadcasting?
For any of those types of programs, yeah, because again, it might be zeroed out in the House, and they've done that in other appropriations bills. But again, to do it in the Senate, because of the 60 vote threshold, to move that bill or anything that has any sort of a cultural or artistic or humanities or something like that, that's going to be very difficult.
Okay, let's go to Jenny, who's in Mission, Kansas. Hi, Jenny. What do you think so far of the Trump presidency?
Well, yes, I'm in the middle in almost every sense of the word. I was a Trump voter in 2016. I was a Biden voter in 2020, and I was a non-voter in 2024. And I feel like I'm just sort of observing from a distance. Honestly, I feel like these 100 days are as advertised. Kind of what he said. I mean, whether you like it or not, and I certainly have things I like and things I don't, but none of this should be like a huge surprise. I mean, I think what's really frustrating me is the focus of the people losing their jobs from the federal government when there are people being laid off in the private sector, which, by the way, funds the federal government. And with very little severance, there's no protections for us. My company had layoffs the very week these started with the federal government, and we were all looking at each other like, wait, they're getting how many months of severance? I mean, I just feel like there's so little recognition in the media of the private sector, those of us working not government jobs. And I'm kind of really sick of seeing just this idea that these jobs are somehow, that they're supposed to be protected when the rest of us are the ones footing the bill for them.
Yeah.
So I may not really like the ham-handed way. I think somebody used that before. It's very ham-handed. There's a lot to not like. I'm not going to disagree with that. But I think the level of just pearl clutching is also very off-putting.
Yeah. Jenny, thank you very much for that call. And with your voting record, you are most certainly in the middle there. Zoe Clark, I imagine in the state of Michigan, and you know we haven't talked about this yet, but there are all the Arab American voters that kind of switched from supporting Biden in 2020 to either supporting Trump or supporting Jill Stein this last time because of the situation in Gaza. Yeah, what do you make of that call from Jenny?
Well, I mean, at first, I want to say something that Jenny said first, which is that, my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear about your job, and I empathize with you. But one of the things that I think is really fascinating when I've heard folks who sort of say this line, and Jenny, if you're still, maybe you can tell me a little bit more what you think when I say this. But I'm so curious about where we got to this point in the United States where you hear about someone else sort of losing their job, and then it's, well, what about me? Right? That there was this time sort of in, I'd like to think maybe, farther back than I can remember, where it was sort of, we can all be okay, right? All boats rise. Mm-hmm. And now it very much feels like it's, well, they're suffering, but my suffering is bigger. And I'm not trying to discount that. But this idea, well, what if everybody had enough? What if we all were able to be okay? And sort of this, there's just not enough to go around. And I think it's something that's really changed in the United States over the past few decades about how we see each other, that it feels like we're against each other, that if you have more than I have, it's not okay. And the haves and have-nots is getting bigger, so that's not shocking. But when I've talked to a lot of voters who say this, it's not fair that so-and-so gets this. It's not fair that we're giving these dollars to a different country when we should be giving them, to our cities, for example. So I don't know if Jenny's still on the line, but
she's
I'm
not
wondering...
on the line anymore.
Okay.
But I'm sure she heard all of that. Let's get to Christine, who's in Syracuse, Indiana. Hi, Christine. Tell us about your thoughts about the Trump presidency so far.
Well, I'm a union member. I was a member of the IBEW. I've listened to Sean Fain. We've developed a global economy, and the global economy has brought prices down. My difficulty has always been, and it started in 2017 because Trump tried to direct his encouragement and get votes from union members. Well, his 2017 tax bill blew up our deficit. And within that tax bill, according to the Taxation and Economic Policy, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, there was a little something in there that if you invested overseas, you didn't pay anything in the way of corporate income taxes, which incentivized the moving of even more jobs. And that was Donald Trump. And as one of your callers had said earlier, or one of your speakers said earlier, that he negotiated these agreements. And now he doesn't like that? In the union business, because I did collective bargaining, that's bargaining in bad faith. It truly is. And that is difficult. The other part is the young lady that called previously. I'd like to say she needs to read Michael Lewis's book where he talks about government employees. I have a sister who works for the government. These people are dedicated people. And if you really want to get all boats lifted, let's go back to the 1950s when unionization was everything. The man that's in the White House now wants to gut the NLRB. That's not something we want. Yeah. We want good, strong unions where people have, we need to all be making a living wage. We need to all, I'm telling you, I worked 30 years. Every time we talked about daycare, we're still talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Christine,
what happens is wealthy people have been holding us
we've
down.
got it. Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate your call. And let me go to Chad Pergram there. She brings up the issue of the tax cuts, the corporate taxes. And it is interesting that one thing it seems like those in power right now in Washington can agree on is that they want more tax cuts. They want to extend the Trump tax cuts from 2017. Do you think that they'll be able to do that given the repercussions for the deficit?
You hear me say this all the time. It's about the math. One of the things I honed into today on that vote that they passed at 216-214. So in other words, had they flipped one vote, they have a tie, the thing goes down. At the end of the vote, we had heard all this clamoring of all the House conservatives, the Freedom Caucus members, this wasn't going to cut enough money. There was a caucus on the floor with Mike Johnson and these moderate New York Republicans, Mike Lawler from just outside the city, Nicole Malliotakis, who represents Staten Island and a little bit of Brooklyn. They are very concerned about these cuts. They are moderates, and they are interested in what's called SALT, the reduction for state, in high tax states, SALT as it's called. And the idea that if you don't put SALT into the bill here, then you're going to have, more potential for deficits, you see, because you have that tax revenue coming in. And so they want their assurances. So this is going to be very hard to cut all these taxes, cut all this spending, and also, as they say, balance the budget. I don't know how they could possibly do that. Right. I mean, as Chip Roy said today, the math doesn't math. Yeah. But that's going to be very challenging.
Let's get to Chris, who's in Longmont, Colorado. Hi, Chris. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, so the past 100 days have been a lot. As a Canadian dual citizen, I've been really... my family and I have been really anxious watching the news, seeing everything that's happening. And I have to say that he's really put off a lot of people. I know people who voted for him. They won't vote for, that party ever again. So I think that he's alienated a lot of people. Also, Pierre Elliott Trudeau famously said that being next door to the United States is like being neighbors with an elephant. And I think that the United States has a responsibility to the countries around it, the countries in, not just North America, but Central America, South America, Guam, all these other areas that we've directly impacted and affected. We're now saying, okay, you guys are hung out to dry. You guys can figure this out on your own. And then China's just filling in that gap. So I don't know what they want to do here.
But you, as a dual citizen, I can imagine it's been a troubling period of time. We did a live show that was live across the United States and Canada, and heard from a lot of Canadians who were very upset, and a lot of Americans who were apologizing also for what was happening. So, Chris, thank you very much for that. Zoe, sort of gets back to what we were talking about earlier, and that you're seeing right there on the ground in Michigan.
It absolutely does, right? And it's again, as I said, a paradigm shift of who we sort of imagine to be our friends and our allies. And then when you look at the countries that aren't having any tariffs be put on, and it's Russia. And some will say, well, that's because of their sanctions, but there were other countries that had been sanctioned as well where there were tariffs. And so it's one of these things that I think on the foreign stage, many folks are bracing themselves for. And again, we still have, 3.5 years left to go. And if this much can change within less than 3 months, it's a lot that's likely to come again in the next 3.5 years.
I'm going to sneak in one more caller, Andrew in Irwin, Pennsylvania. Hi, Andrew. Go ahead briefly with your thoughts about the first 100 days of Trump.
Hello, guys. Thank you for taking my call. What I want to comment on is more about the feelings people have about him being a little more authoritative than people are used to, which I think is a feeling that many, including myself, are feeling. The general secure idea that certain things in this country you just can't do that people usually have, some people don't quite feel that way anymore. And there are news articles saying what's going to happen. People, things are being challenged that haven't quite been challenged before. Mm-hmm. My greatest comfort is that I think that more than that, though, the Constitution specifically is a very, in certain areas, a very specific document. And there are things that no matter how hard anybody pushes, nobody in the country, including people in government, people of the Republican Party, are going to let fly. People aren't just going to, throw away certain protections and, and things that have not been allowed in this country just because of this one man. So you've got faith in the Constitution, Andrew. Thank you. We'll have to leave it there. But Chad Pergram, a good note to end on, and I just wonder, as somebody who follows this every single day, is there something happening differently than what you expected in the first 100 days of the Trump presidency? Or is there something big that you are expecting will happen that hasn't happened yet?
Covering it from a congressional standpoint, it seemed like a lot of his battles last time around were with the Congress. This battle so far, it's with the markets, it's with other countries, it's with government itself. And because as I said toward the top of the show, we seem to have had that, change in the shift of where the Republican Party is. And I think that's partly why he's not beating up on the Congress as much. I mean, he was at loggerheads with Paul Ryan, certainly Mitch McConnell, who was the Republican leader in the Senate all the time. They couldn't undo Obamacare, which is something that he campaigned on and promised. So that is very different. So far, he's getting what he wants from Congress. That could change if they fail to pass, as he calls it, the big, beautiful bill.
The big, beautiful bill. Thank you so much to my guests, Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram and Michigan Public Political Director Zoe Clark. Thanks to you both.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
And thanks to everyone who called in. And by the way, you can leave us a message if you didn't get through at 844-464-3353. Don't forget The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're doing this extra episode every week called One Thing Trump Did. And coming up next week, it's going to be about Trump's designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations. And next week, right back here, we are taking your questions on the economy with former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers.
Oh, wow. You can also, as always, call in at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out and listen to themiddle.com, or you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter, buy a T-shirt, and find a new section called Tolliver's Tidbits, okay?
Is a great section, some of your new music that you're listening to. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmistad, John Barth, Annika Deschler, and Brandon Kondritz. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the more than 420 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I'll talk to you next week.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I actually drive better when I'm high. It heightens my senses, calms me down. If anything, I'm more careful. Honestly, it just helps me focus.
That's probably what the driver who killed a 4-year-old told himself. And now he's in prison. You see, no matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.